Awesome. Hey, everybody. How is it going? I'm Nick Baldwin, co-founder of LabCoatAgents, and I have three amazing and talented people and real estate professionals on the webinar today. These three, Daniel Dixon, Jen Davis, and Saria Finkelstein, all have amazing businesses, but they have awesome buyer systems. Well, a lot of times we talk about, do you do a buyer consultation before you meet with someone? Do you have them sign a buyer agreement? And it's almost like this controversial topic. It's almost like buyer consultation is a four-letter word in real estate, right? Like people either love it or they don't do it. And I think that there's limiting belief behind why people tend to not do it. And we're going to get into that in a minute. But let me just introduce our panel. Daniel Dixon is the CEO of the Dixon Group in Denver, 322 units and 118 million in 2020. He is the leader of the KW National Social Equity Task Force for the Mountain Region. And this is really awesome, Daniel. Your group donates a percentage of every home sale towards single parent families and emerging Black real estate agents. I love that so much. Thanks for being here.
That's awesome.
We've got Saria Finkelstein. What's up? Third generation realtor in South Florida, acting as a lead buyer specialist for the Lori Finkelstein Reader. Say hi to Lori for me, for her team. In 2020, Saria helped 106 families achieve a goal of home ownership, and the team as a whole helped 965 families for 320 million in volume last year, which is awesome. These numbers are nuts considering you're in Florida. Well, COVID doesn't exist in Florida, so it's super easy for you.
So true. So true.
Jen Davis joined real estate in 2008. She fell in love very quickly with the fast-paced environment and building relationships with her clients. She and her showing agents have consistently sold over 225 properties per year since 2017. And the Holt Homes Group, which is the team she's on as the lead. What's your role in the Holt Homes Group? It's not lead buyer specialist, something else now, right?
I am now the CEO. I took over.
Oh my gosh.
I know. Yes, it's a big deal in the real estate world.
Yeah, it is. 538 homes in 2020 with only 6 agents in production. That is lean and mean, and I love it. So thank you all for being here. I just felt like you each needed awesome introductions because these numbers are incredible, and it's going to be awesome to talk about your systems and debunk some limiting beliefs around buyer consultations and buyer agreements. So let's get started. I want to go to Daniel really quick first, because Daniel, you used to work for Trulia. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and then you got into the real estate business, and your business is very heavy on internet lead generation, right?
It is.
Okay. And I remember when we did a panel together at Mega Camp, you were talking about how you're doing consults. But before I get into that, out of the 322 units, how many of that are buyer sides?
Somewhere around 70, 72%.
Okay. Awesome. Okay. Wow. Oh, you said 7. Then I heard the percent. I was like, wow, wow. Okay. That's amazing. So
they say listings leverage leads. We kind of flipped it. So I have a mortgage business that I run as well. So we capture 80% of our buyer business with our lending team.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Super profitable for us.
So talk to us about, do you do a buyer consultation with every single one of those people?
We do. And I mean, Zoom has really changed the game for us in being able to do on-the-spot appointments or having an iPad. And even if we're meeting somebody at their first showing, because we do a lot of internet lead generation, even if we're going out and showing that house and opening that door, we're still running through, even if it's a snapshot, a quick version of the buyer presentation, because it's so important to set the expectations, especially in this crazy market, with what to expect, why homes are selling for so much, why we're writing appraisal gaps, why we're having to get in the home as soon as it literally hits the market. All of that tone is set on the front end when we get a new client by being able to walk them through the process. So whether it's a brand new first-time home buyer who knows nothing, or someone that's a repeat buyer, it's still an opportunity for us to gain control of the situation, lead from the front, and really show them what happens. I'm in charge. This is my experience. This is why we do this way. And here's how we compete in this crazy market.
Got it. So, I know it's interesting that you do buyer consultations with every single one of the buyers that you work with. And I know, do the two of you also do that? I want to also include all of us in the conversation. Jen, do you do buyer consultations with every single one of those buyers? 220. Wait, so there were 538 homes sold last year, and of those homes, how many of those were buyer sides?
240.
Okay, wow. So like 50%. And Saria, your 106 was how many buyers?
I was also about 70%.
Okay, and so Jen, do you also do consults with everyone?
Our buyer agent does, yes. I mean,
But that's what I mean, yeah.
Myself or a showing partner, absolutely. Somebody is doing the buyer consult. I think Daniel nailed it with his answer, right? It's the setting of expectations. I learned from Saria that, it's your strategy session, right? That's how you make the strategy for your buyers to win in the market. And what we're seeing right now is that consult is the reason that our buyers are winning in multiple offers. We're still somewhere between 87 to 88% of our offers written to offers accepted, and we're in the same market everybody else is in. The key difference between our buyers and another agent's buyers is that our buyers are prepared. They're prepared to do what it takes to buy and to win in a competing offer.
That's great. And I'm going to put a mental note in being prepared in a second. And Saria, how about you? I mean, I already know the answer, but a lot of people don't. We could just be like, I already know, and just not tell anybody and be like, we have this.
I mean, I think it's always been important to do a buyer consultation, right? But I think now more than ever, when so many people are letting up on it, is the most important time, because educating people on the market. And I always say, listen, I'm not telling you this to scare you. I'm telling this to prepare you, right? Because these people are not prepared for these multiple offer situations. They're not prepared for what they have to do to actually get an offer accepted. And the only way they can be prepared and they can write offers that can get accepted is if you educate them as the real estate concierge.
That's a good point. So I want to go back to that. Like, Jen, you had mentioned that you prepare your buyers, right, for this crazy market. We're all in this market together. And so you'll have a lot of buyers probably, when you bring up a buyer consult, it's one of those things that I think is not really known. It's something that they're not really aware of, right? Like, as agents, we like to compare ourselves to other industries, right? Like, we like to say, we're like doctors and we're like lawyers. And, I always say, well, the doctor doesn't like just bring you into the surgery and, open you up and then ask you what's wrong, right? An attorney doesn't show up to court in the courtroom and say, hey, so, what are you being charged with? Like, so why do you think real estate agents are so afraid or hesitant to do these buyer consultations when you guys are saying now, especially in this new market, being prepared is how you're going to win the deal?
I think that most real estate agents run their business like a real estate agent instead of like a business owner, and they're reactive instead of proactive. What I know about buyers is that buyers will make a better decision faster the more they know. It is a direct correlation between the amount of education that they have and the buyer remorse, right? The more education they have, the less remorse they feel later on what they purchased.
Yeah.
And so when I look at it, the reason most people don't do it is they don't understand it. They feel like if they push a buyer off at all, they're going to lose the opportunity to work with that buyer. What I know though, is it sets the tone for your whole relationship. Daniel referenced it when he first started. You're building this foundation of a relationship with your clients and you're getting control over it. I love my buyers. I want to be their friend. And more important than that, I want to be their fiduciary, right? I have a lot of friends and I have a lot of friends that happen to be clients of mine. However, at the end of the day, I need to be able to look at them and say, I gave you the best advice that I could. And it may not have been what they wanted to hear. And it's exactly what they needed to hear. We used to say, I'm going to get you the best possible house at the best possible price. Right now, that doesn't mean the least expensive.
Right.
It means the price that wins. You don't want to be homeless. You're going to pay what you need to pay to get this house. And so I think when we talk about that consult or the strategy session, when you're talking about that is, if you don't do it, your buyers later get into the point where they're going to make what they feel to be a decision as an emotional decision instead of as an intelligent decision. And so if we're setting them up for success and we ask the right questions and we give them the right information, when they get to the point of making the offer, they know that they're going to have to go 110, 120, 130% over list price in an effort to actually get the offer done. If you don't tell them that until they're ready to make the offer, what happens is they don't understand who you're working for. They think you're working for the seller. They don't think you have their best interests at heart. So that conversation has to be very clear, very consistent, and very often during the time that you're working with your buyers.
Yeah, you said a lot of great things there, and I want to ask each of you, how do you prepare them for that news, right? Like, because they're coming in and they expect to have this agent that's gonna, like you said, get them the best house for the best price. How do you then break that news to them? Like, I know some buyers are aware of what's going on in the market, but maybe they're not that aware, right? Maybe they're not that prepared. So Daniel, when you're having these consults, how are your agents kind of breaking this news to them that they're gonna have to come to the table big time, right? If they want to get what they want.
We have a couple of ways. We like to say that buying a home in Denver is like buying something on eBay, right? Like, put your bid in and hold on. We'll see where we go from here. But I think as agents, we're very arrogant. The fact that we've been in business for so long, whether it be 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, whatever it is, and you're a client of mine, you need to just listen to what I say. And so a big change that we made earlier this year was in our buyer consult, we're going through sold properties. And so we're literally showing you in the MLS exactly how long it was on the market and exactly what happened and what it actually sold for. And that creates a lot more credibility for us, rather than, hey, I sold 50 houses last year, you should listen to me as your agent. It doesn't resonate the same as showing actual concrete evidence as to what's happening in our market, and you're with the best person to protect you and guide you through this transaction.
Yeah, that's awesome. Saria, how are you having that conversation? Because I imagine it could be difficult, or maybe they don't believe you, right?
I think that what's interesting is now more than ever, I feel most people have an idea of what's going on in the real estate market, because I feel they're talking about it on so many different platforms now because it's just bananas. So I feel more people have at least some education when I'm sitting down with them. But I also do the same thing. I love showing them the closed sales and showing them original list price to closed price. That is a huge tool to show them that most of the homes are selling above price. But for me, I'm very data driven. I use trend graphics to show them graphs of what's been going on and the difference between a year ago when 1 out of every 25 homes was selling, and now it's every home is selling, and sometimes more homes are selling than are available, right? So it's what is hard, like Daniel was saying, how we feel like they should just listen to us. It's important to show them rather than just tell them, because you have to remember that they don't know us from Joe Schmo. Right. So if, like Jen was saying, if we just tell them the information when they go and see the house and we're like, okay, this one's listed for 740, we've got to write 800 to be competitive. They're going to be like, what? Like, what is this girl talking about? Like, she clearly doesn't know what's going on. So you have to prepare them for that. So when that time comes, and a lot of realtors, we tend to forget that we have to essentially prove ourselves and show our value to these buyers so that we can earn their trust.
I love that. Jen, how about you? Like, how are you having these conversations with these buyers to prepare them for coming to the table, like sometimes over 100,000 more than the seller's asking?
Well, I think, it's exactly what Daniel and Saria said. It's data driven, and I'm relating it to what they know, right? So I'm saying, here's what the data is. Take a look at this. And it's the thought process behind it. My coach always says it. It's, hard conversation, easy life. Easy conversation, hard life. If I have the hard conversation up front, the rest of the process is going to go pretty easily. If I kind of scoot around it or think I'm going to be their friend or I'm going to tiptoe around it, it gets hard later. I know that the more houses I show a buyer, the more offers I write for a buyer, and we're unsuccessful, the less faith they have in me.
Right.
So I am not a super direct person. Actually, I am like a very high I on the disc scale of things. And
Yeah.
this was an adjustment for me to be able to get to the point where I felt comfortable in understanding that I was doing a disservice to people if I wasn't saying this to them often enough.
Yeah, I used to have a very difficult time with being direct, right? Because I was at that point I was a real estate agent
Mhm.
and not, I wasn't running a real estate business.
Right.
And I was allowing the client to, take control, and I was very timid about it. And if you guys know me, anything about me now, like I'm pretty outspoken,
I was just gonna say that.
I'm pretty outspoken. And like, I'm not in production right now. But I was visiting my mother recently, and she was talking about some buyer she was with, and the buyer was being rude to her. And I said, Mom, I would have just been like, what's your problem? Like, did I do something to offend you? Because like, knowing my mother, she's like the nicest person on the planet. And, but like, if I'm having a conversation with a buyer, like you guys are having, I'm saying, listen, if you want this house, you're gonna have to come to the table. You have to suck it up. And, this is what's happening, or we need to look 100,000 cheaper. Right.
So it's funny you say that. So what we're giving a lot of our clients advice is we're telling them to lower their budget so that they can actually be competitive, because at the top of their budget, they can't afford to offer over list price, over appraised value. So we're having them lower their budget so they are in a position where they can actually have a seat at the table and offer over appraised value and use the escalation clause and whatever it is, whatever tools we have in our belt.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. I mean, Saria, you're right. When you look at it that way, and those people that are willing to do that, those are the buyers we're willing to work with. So right now I hear from buyer agents that they're tired, right? There's fatigue, they're exhausted. It's because they're working with buyers that aren't willing to come to the table. What Saria is saying is spot on. If they can't compete in their price range, they have to be willing to have different expectations about what home they're buying. Something has to give if they're a true buyer in this market.
Yeah.
Those are the only buyers we can work with right now if you're going to be effective.
I think I'm doing a lot more of the taking it away in this market of, well, maybe this isn't the time for you to buy, right? Or maybe if this is really the neighborhood that you want to buy in, trying to really get them to see, if you wait a year from now, you might not actually be able to afford a home, not only in this neighborhood, but not in South Florida. Right. And getting them to really come to that realization. And again, not just telling them, but showing them what that price increase looks like. I mean, in my neighborhood alone, 2 months ago, the highest sale was $550. And this month there's 3 sales over $680 in 2 months. Mm-hmm. Right. That's data. When you can show them that, a buyer can't deny it anymore. But if I just told someone that, they'd be like, yeah, right.
Daniel, did you want to say something?
Yeah, the shift that I feel that we're in, we've never thought that we'd be in a position where we'd have all these pre-approved buyers and we can't do anything with them. So now we're teaching our agents, we've already figured out how to get them to the lender, how to get them pre-qualified, get ready to go show houses. Now we're needing to rank them. Who can compete and who can't? Because if you can't compete or you don't have any appraisal gap, unfortunately, we can't spend time there. We can't help you in this market if we don't have the ability to compete, because we know we're going to be a minimum of 1 of 5.
So that's a good point that you bring that up, because Scott in the chat here, who I think's in your region, he's asking, so if somebody only has 3% down or 5% down, would you not work with them, or would you talk to them about maybe being competitive in other areas that they can control as opposed to ones that they can't?
I work with buyers of all price points, all loan types, whatever it is. That to me doesn't matter. But a buyer like that, if they can't physically be competitive at the top of their range, I am going to try and coach them down so they can be more competitive.
Right. So it's not necessarily like, listen, if they have 5% down and there's a $500,000 home and you know there's going to be 25 offers, right? You might say, hey, listen, we might want to look in a 350 range, right? Like, so you could be more competitive. I don't think it's a matter of not working with them. It's a matter of, like you guys were saying, being honest, being upfront, letting them know the realities of it.
Right. Finding
Right?
another strategy.
Well,
Yeah.
I think the other thing that we're missing though is those buyers may not be able to compete with things that are on the MLS.
Oh, that's a very good point, Jen.
So when we look at it, my job is to find my buyer a house. I actually have the tools and skill set to find things that are non-MLS related, right? I can go and I can do a circle prospecting. I can, clearly we look at for sale by owners and expireds, not that there are any anymore, and we can find other inventory for them. So when we look at those types of buyers, like our VA buyers, right? Or for us, I live in a rural area, a USDA buyer that's 100% financing, that's a first-time home buyer. We're still having success with those buyers. Saria came to Springfield one time and a tractor drove through the airport when she was here. And so when you look at these things, we're like, we can do other things for these buyers. So Scott, I think all three of us on here, absolutely, we're willing to work with any buyer in any financial situation. It's just that the correct expectations need to be set so that they can have success within their home search too.
Right. I mean, here's what it comes down to is like, we're still running a business.
Mhm.
And if you're attempting to work with someone who's not going to be realistic with what's happening in the market, that's going to be that's also going to be a waste of their time. And it's not going to be fair to them, because then they're going to keep losing and you're going to keep looking bad. Right.
And unfortunately, there's some buyers that they have to lose an offer on 2 or 3 properties before they're ready to say, okay, I'm ready to listen to you.
Yeah.
Right. And unfortunately, yes, some of us buyers, we're working harder than we've ever worked. Sometimes we have to write more offers for these buyers than we've ever had to write before. But sometimes some buyers, they need to feel that pain before they're ready to kind of see the light and take your advice on how to actually get an offer accepted.
So there's 3 things sorry, go ahead, Daniel. Go ahead.
That's a good point. One thing our agents do too for some of the knucklehead buyers that we work with sometimes is we'll go show the house right away and we'll call the listing agent on speaker. Don't take my word for it. Just here, I'm going to have you be part of the conversation and let them tell you that we're 40K over asking price. And I think that really humbles people. To your point, Saria, some people just got to go through it. Now, we're willing to go through it once. We're not going to go through it 2 or 3 times because it's a waste of everyone's effort. Now, I think it's really important for all the agents on this call to realize there is this thing as buyer agent fatigue. And so as much as we're saying how difficult it is, it really only takes one. So you're only looking for one house. You don't need to win 5 houses for one person. So if we get that pop in inventory over a week, all the problems that we're talking about can completely go away because we won that one offer on that one house. So you got to stay positive. You got to stay motivated to help your clients out.
So there's a couple of things I want to talk about. And before I get into those, I want to answer Jennifer's question on Zoom. She just wants some gentle scripts on how you would maybe put a buyer on the back burner, for lack of a better term.
I mean, for me, it's taking it away. It's doing pain versus pleasure and asking them questions like, well, what would it mean to you if you weren't able to buy a home this year and you had to wait until next year? Right. And then going down deep with them about the difference between purchase price and interest rate. For me, that's the biggest opportunity that I have to really break down a buyer. And I always give them an example and I say, listen, I was working with a buyer in 2019, and in 2019, they were approved for 400,000. Now they're approved for 500,000 because the interest rate is that much lower. And at 500,000, their payment is actually lower now than it would have been if they bought at 400,000. So let me ask you, is it more important for you to have a lower monthly payment or for you to have a lower purchase price? Right? And let them answer the question. I think also, side note, that's where a lot of us realtors struggle, is we ask a question and then we start answering it and we put our foot in our mouth, right? Learn how to ask a question and then shut our mouth. Really, really very important tool.
I think if I were looking at, like what Jennifer saying, somebody that really can't buy right now, like you do the takeaway and they're like, I still like they can't buy. They maybe don't know that they can't buy. I think it's the thought process of honestly just being very transparent with them and saying, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I can't wait to help you find your perfect house. And I'm so excited to have that opportunity. Unfortunately, here are my concerns. I'm concerned that I'm going to get you into a situation that's not going to be best for your family. I'm happy to continue to give you market updates. I'm going to still check in on you. And when we're in a different position, whether that is the market changes a little bit, your financial circumstances change a little bit, then we can get back together and see how we can work together moving forward. But these buyers, if you spend your time in your strategy session or your buyer consult focused on criteria, you never get to this part of the conversation. 80% of your consult should be timeline and motivation. Everything else stems from that. And so we're going to ask a ton of questions. We're going to know what they want in a house. But when you figure out their motivation and timeline, if their motivation is high enough and their means are high enough, they'll make it work in any market. The buyer agent fatigue comes in from them not understanding the motivation and timeline of people that they're chasing. I really do genuinely believe that, because we're only helping those people that have the means and are willing to compete in today's market. There's not fatigue because they're really not missing out on more than probably one offer. I mean, at that point, they know what has to be done.
Yeah, and it's weird when you put when you're real with people. As agents, we have this scarcity mindset, and I try to tell my team and all my agents come from a place of abundance. But letting one person go can free up so many more opportunities for you inside of your world. And our team is unique because we can potentially, as our high achieving agents cannot have time for that person. There's a brand new agent that just started on our team last week that's willing to take that person out and learn and still give them that high quality of service. So I think a team model is really, really important in this sense, because me as an agent, I'm not producing anymore, but if I was, I can't work with that person. I just don't have enough time in my day to be able to fit that person in. But there's always going to be somebody who's willing and able to be able to show those houses and try to compete.
Yeah, Daniel, you know, I said earlier in the call that you are very heavy on internet lead generation, and you know, that type of lead generation is very different than all the others, right? It's very different than Sphere. It's very different than circle prospecting, because it's essentially a race to getting someone on the phone and then getting in front of them. So when we were on our mega camp panel, you talked about how you were doing more consults via Zoom. Can you talk about the approach that your agents have when they're following up with internet leads to get in front of people and do those consults? What are you guys teaching them to get those done?
Right now is the best time to do it. So when we're on the phone, we're really pushing for, do you have 5 or 10 minutes? I'm going to shoot you over a quick link. People don't like these, as silly as it sounds, they don't like these formal meetings. So we want to make it as informal as possible, where I just want to show you something on a map. And like, it's not, we're going for a scheduled buyer consult. We're getting together in a Zoom meeting, and then the buyer consult will be a part of that meeting. Does that make sense? So it's a roundabout way. We were losing a lot of appointments with speed to lead, get them on the phone, convert them, schedule an appointment, and then they're not showing up to the office. And now we're playing this chase game. And Zoom and the pandemic has made that happen so much quicker for us. So we can get face-to-face. We can warm transfer to our lender, add our lender onto this call, and really get the process moving a whole heck of a lot faster than we've ever been able to do before. That's been huge.
The Zoom consult changed the game. Sorry. It changed the game. It totally changed the game. You know, it's, for what I've noticed is that buyers are so much more comfortable doing a consult. They're in the comfort of their own home. They're in their pajamas. They're drinking a glass of wine. Their dog's next to them. It's a much easier close. And in my opinion, it's much easier to get a buyer to agree to a consultation on Zoom than it is to get them to come into an office where they feel uncomfortable, stuffy. They're not themselves. And it's a lot harder to sometimes read them. I just did my first in-person consultation this week since the pandemic. Because the buyer demanded it, right? And sometimes you got to do what the buyer wants. And I loved it. I just love the consult. I'm just a total freak. Like, I just am. But I love I love being able to sit next to my dog doing the consultation. Like it, to me, I'm more comfortable and they're more comfortable. So you're able to really get to know them personally. They show you their dog on the camera. They pull their baby up. Like you really get to learn more about them.
Yeah.
So I feel it's not an excuse anymore to not do buyer consults because it's easier than ever to get a buyer to agree to do them.
So what I'm hearing, Saria, is if people are drinking wine, it's much easier to get them into a consult.
Hello, duh.
She's also drinking wine while she's on.
Yeah, doing consults at 9 p.m.
And a lot of our agents are able to like have their notes next to them.
Yeah.
So for a new agent who's practicing their buyer consult, they can have their flow and their hot button topics, their ways to build rapport, their question asking, all of that right here without making anyone feel uncomfortable.
That's true.
We've seen a lot more success that way as well.
So what are Daniel on the Zoom, not Daniel Dixon, another Daniel. He's asking, what are three, maybe five questions that you feel, all three of you, are must asks during a consult? And before you answer that, one of the things that I know that I've learned from Saria is that like questions that you ask should lead to other questions, right? Like, and also a lot of the things that people say aren't real. Like it's not really what they think it is, in the sense of when you ask someone what they're.
I got you, Nick.
Yeah, I can't. My mind.
I got you. I got you. I'm in your brain. I got you. Right. So one of my closing things that I always say to get buyers to agree to do a consult is I'd rather ask you 500 questions and show you 5 homes than ask you 5 questions and show you 500 homes, right? No one wants to waste their time going to look at 500 homes. Everyone wants to save time, right? So that's one of my closing lines to be able to get them on for that consult. But what Nick was talking about was how you can have a list of questions in front of you of what you want to ask the buyer. But it is not just those questions, right? Each question should have typically anywhere from 2 to 5 additional questions. So for example, right, are you looking for a 1 or a 2-story home? Either is fine, right? Your average buyer agent is just going to write down either. I'm going to continue going after that and say, okay, great. Well, if it is a 2-story, does it matter to you if the master bedroom is upstairs or downstairs? Okay, well, let me ask you one more question. Do you have any elderly family who might come stay with you? Do you need a bedroom other than the master bedroom on the bottom floor, right? I want to get down to the nitty gritty of what matters to them. Same thing, you could do the same thing for a backyard. If they say they want a pool, okay, great. Well, if the pool takes up the whole backyard, does that work for you? No, okay, so are you looking for yard space, or what if it's all pavers? Does that work for you, right? It's going so deep with them so that there's no question as to what they like. There's nothing worse as a listing agent when a buyer walks into the house with their buyer agent, they see the stairs and they go, oh, I don't want a 2-story. You're like, are you kidding me? My seller just spent hours cleaning the house, getting the kids out of the house, picking up dog hair, whatever it is, to get ready for this showing. And you couldn't even ask them if they wanted 2 stories, right? So go deep with these people, because it's not only going to save you time, it's going to save them time, and they're going to be so thankful for it.
Yeah, I love that.
Preach.
Perfect. That's what I was going to say. So.
Ditto.
In our market,
yeah, go ahead, Daniel. Sorry.
I think one of the most important questions that we ask is just simply, have you heard what's happening in our market? I want to know what you know, so I know how to position the information I'm going to tell you. You're either crazy experienced and your uncle just bought a house and went 30K over. Cool, we can streamline this. Or no, I haven't. My dad bought a house 20 years ago. We've got to slow down and possibly get dad on the call too, because as soon as you tell dad you're going 10K over asking price, dad has a problem with it, and now we're backpedaling and trying to catch up. So I want to know who are the decision makers and who's involved in this. And I love, like, let's bring dad on. I want to answer dad's questions too. I want everyone to be involved, because it's going to make my life easier as the agent, instead of having all these side conversations that are happening throughout the transaction. And then now I'm having to continue to battle those people throughout, contract to close.
I think if I were going to say the most important question for me are motivation and timeline. So if I'm going after motivation, I want to say something like, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I want my motivation to match your motivation. And if what you're telling me is that you need to be in a house in Springfield, Missouri by the end of May, that means to me that we need to be under contract on that home in the next week to 10 days. So what else that means to me is that every time a listing hits the market or we find an off-market property, that I'm going to call, text, email you, and send a honing pigeon your way. If that form of communication is a little much for you, let's dial it in. Like, right, where do you fall in line with this? I want to know what your motivation is to know what my communication level is. What you can find out about people is if they don't want that level of communication, it's kind of a signal about what's happening in their life. The other thing I want to know is what happens if we don't find that house for you to move into by the end of May. What's your plan B? And then what Saria said is you stop and you listen. Here's what I will tell you. The more clear their plan B is, the more likely their plan B is their plan A. If they have thought through the family member they're going to live with, the apartment they're going to rent, the whatever else it may be, the more detailed that plan is, the more likely they are comfortable not moving forward and being under contract on a house to purchase by the end of the month.
That's such for me, like the psychological of that, right? Like if you ask them and then they go off on this really detailed tangent, you're like, that's really what you want to do, clearly, right?
Well,
because they're so specific about it.
You do, and then you ask the follow-up questions. Saria's right. We have an outline of questions, guys, and those questions we go through, but when something sparks our interest or there's something that is out of bounds of what we're expecting them to say, then all of a sudden we're like, wait a second, we've got to narrow in on this. That detailed plan, what does that tell me? And we've got to have the emotional intelligence enough to say, that's where the pause happens. That's where the additional questions come in. Let's dig into that a little bit and see what we can do to either get them off of the fence or move them into a nurture plan. Someone can't buy now. I still love them. I still want them in my follow-up plans. I want to help them 18 months from now. I just want to know where to match them so that I don't overwhelm them or lose them.
Let's get into showing agents, because, you know, I was very, when I first met Saria, she's like, oh yeah, you know, I do like 60, 70 buyer sides a year. I don't show any homes. I'm like, what? That's crazy talk, but it's true. And when you tell that to a real estate agent and not a business owner, they're like, well, my clients want me to open the door for them and they don't care. If the expectation is, I will show you every home, you better be there. If the expectation is my showing assistant or whatever you want to call them will be there to meet you and show you properties you want to look at, that's the expectation, right? So it goes back to that. Let's talk about how you guys set the stage for bringing your showing agent into the picture. Whoever wants to start. Daniel, go ahead.
I think Saria is the one that's mastered. I feel like she needs to start.
Saria, yeah, you go ahead. I don't know why I didn't start with Saria. Saria, go ahead.
So I'm a big fan of the showing partner model.
Yeah,
We all know this. Actually, I'm really excited because my most recent showing partner is my wife. So I'm really excited. She just started working with me. But so the showing partner model for me was born because I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off, right? And I realized that I wasn't able to give my clients the service that I was promising them in the first place. And anytime that that's happening in my business, anytime that I can't deliver on my promise, I know it's time to make a shift in some capacity. I have to figure out what I can do, or I need to change my promise. And I'm not willing to change my promise. I'm not willing to lower my service. So I have to find a way to leverage it and be able to still give that to the consumer. So that was how the showing partner model was born. Now, for me, in this market, it's way easier to pitch the showing partner model because they don't care who is showing them the house. They just want a house, right? So in this market, if you've been questioning, testing it out, this is your time. This is your invitation right here for you.
Get closer to the camera so we can.
This is your invitation. Okay. This is your invitation to do it because now it is easier than ever because buyers don't give a flying F who is taking them to see this house. That's the reality. They just want to get a house. Now,
They come into your
normally-
office, they're like, who's showing me the house? You? Is it you? You? Let's go.
Exactly. Right. So it's all about a script. And those of you who know me, who's ever heard me before, I'm a highly scripted person, though you will never know that I'm scripting. I won't sound scripted, but that is who I am. Right. So it's about explaining it in a way that it's a benefit for them. So one of the best things about working with me is that you get to see a home whenever you want to see a home, and we get to work around your schedule. You know, I work with a lot of people who previously had bad experiences with other realtors, and the complaints that we always get were that they were missing out on houses because the realtor was too busy and they couldn't get them in to see the house before they went pending. Well, my promise to you is that is never going to happen when working with me. How awesome is that? Right? And then I just tell them, I have multiple showing partners that I work with, so that whenever you want to go and see a home, I've got someone lined up to take you. You do not need me to be there to say, this is the kitchen and this is the bathroom. I'm pretty sure that you guys know that. What you are hiring me to do is to be your negotiation specialist, to write an offer that's going to stand out amongst the other 25 offers, and to make sure that yours is the one that gets accepted and stays together until closing. Is that why you're hiring me? Okay, great. So then does it matter who is taking you to see the home? No. Okay, great. Let's move on. Right? It's that simple. They don't care. And for realtors who feel that they want me to be there, this is my question to you. Would you force your client to buy a house that they didn't want to buy? No, you wouldn't. So it has nothing to do with you. They're either going to love the house or they're not. And whether you're there or not, they're going to love the house because they're not buying the house with you in it. You are there to get them the house. That is it. Microphone.
Boom.
Hey, mic drop. My agents that are on this call, like,
What's
that
up?
is the script. That is it.
Because how many times how many times has a buyer missed out on seeing the property because their agent felt that they needed to be there with them and they didn't get in? Right?
Not on
So
my
good.
team since
By the way,
2016.
oh,
Not on my team. Nobody's missed out on seeing a house.
yeah. Saria, if there are agents on this call who are feeling very overwhelmed, they're very buyer heavy. I know a lot of people are, right? Like, what would be the first step in getting that help that they need with a showing partner? What should they do? Who should they look for,
So to start off, right? So I look at my showing partners, and I've talked about this before. I look at them like my little chicks that are sitting there waiting for me to give them worms, right? And a lot of times when people are nervous about starting, they're like, I don't have enough worms to give them. I'm nervous about bringing someone on, right? Because what you have to understand as a business owner, when you bring someone into your world, you have to be prepared that if there's only enough money this month to pay your bills or pay them, they're the ones getting paid. So until you're in that mindset, it is not time for you to bring someone on. And I wasn't ready in the beginning to take on that responsibility. I was 23 years old. I was not there. So what I did was I created a pool of showing partners in the office. These were newer agents who were looking to learn, who wanted to make extra money, who were floundering, right? Because we know how many agents don't make it past that first year because they don't have money coming in. So I created a system that was a win-win system. So I had this pool of agents. I created, we used GroupMe at the time, GroupMe, Slack, text, whatever works for you. Doesn't matter. Send up a flare, firework, Facebook, I don't care. Find these group of people who are wanting to learn and wanting to make extra money. Have a little bit of a training with them. What are your expectations with them? If you have a form you want them to fill out after the showings, whatever it is that works for you. And you can start off that way so that you're paying. I was doing paying per door. Some people do per hour. I got a lot of flack in the beginning for choosing to pay per door because they were like, well, then why are they ever going to want to sell them a house? So what I did was I shifted the model, right? So I made it so that when they showed the house that the buyer bought, they got to listen in on the negotiations. They got to be copied on every single email throughout the transaction so that it became a way for them to get educated as well. So I basically pimped myself out, right? So that they could have an opportunity to learn while helping me build my business. And that worked until it didn't work anymore. And then when it didn't work anymore and I had enough worms to give a chick, I got myself a chick.
Nice. I love it. Lots
let me
of
add
gold
something
there.
really quick. I think one of the big pieces too that we dropped the
ahead,
ball
Daniel,
on a
sorry.
lot starting this showing assistant type model is we weren't communicating enough. So when the showings wrapped up, we've got to jump back into the communication so your clients don't completely feel like they've been handed off. And so if we can increase that communication, group text, showing person said you liked this, I called the agent, still act like you're working even though you're sitting at your desk. That'll go a long way with keep the clients happy, make them feel like they didn't go to, brand new agent A or agent B from the top tier producer that you are.
I think I did it backwards from Saria. I had the worms before I had the showing partner. So I think my last year as a buyer agent without a showing partner, I closed 110 units, all buy side, 100% buy side, no listings.
Wait, you said without?
She's crazy. She's
I have
crazy.
I have a high
love
pain tolerance.
Wait. Without a showing partner?
Without a showing partner. So 2015 was my last year without a showing partner. And so then what I did, I looked at it like the MREA model though, right? So it was, I had admin support, then I had incredible lead gen support. And then what happens is there's a ceiling of growth, right? For our team. We need you when there's a ceiling, you either need a system or a person. And my options were to compete with another buyer agent or bring on something called a showing partner that I'd never actually heard of. So I was winging it. And so I brought in my first showing partner who's still on our team in 2016. And she and I were running a ton of buy side business that year. I think in May of that year, Kathleen and I put 36 buyers under contract. I was still in showings with my first showing partner because my pipeline, I had too many worms. I was trying to pass worms out to people at the store. And then we added a second showing partner. So the way that I ran the showing agent model, I was the point person handling the consults, the negotiations, and then I had two showing partners that worked opposite schedules so that they had a high quality of life. And we always had the coverage that Saria was talking about. So we always had somebody that could show property, and my showing agents were, had a couple of nights a week off, one day of the weekend off, etc.
That's awesome. I love all that. Hey, this is a good question in the Zoom, and I think everyone can answer it. But it's positioned towards Daniel. Right now, like you're either having, this is what I've noticed. You're either having your worst year ever or you're having your best year ever. I'm not really seeing a lot of like, I'm doing okay, right? It's both ends of the spectrum. And the ones who are having the worst year ever are missing out on all the offers for their buyers. The ones having their best year ever are, already like 70% of their 2020 volume at this point, right? So with the agents who are not having the greatest year, you could feel this panic and anxiety just to want to jump up and meet with everybody that you come in contact with, whether it be an internet lead or whether it be someone in an open house or whatever it is, right? So you stay focused, how do you decide who gets a buyer consult now and who maybe should get one in 6 months, and you just keep in touch with them and then meet them later? How do you decide that when you're having that initial conversation?
In my opinion, I think everybody needs to be met now. Buyers are liars, right? Like you're not buying for 6 months. 6 months, it's important to know, okay, you want to close in 6 months. That means we're gonna have a 45-day escrow, call it. We got to start looking at houses in 2 or 3 weeks from now and just kind of back that timeline out. So I think everybody deserves a consult right now. Even if you're out of state and you're moving, it's never too early to get educated about the market is the way I position it. And so if you're willing to sit and spend 10, 15 minutes with me so I can educate you as to what to expect, what's happening, get a feel for me, I can get a feel for you and really build that relationship and get in relationship with you. It's never too early for that. So I don't even care if it's next year. Like, let's talk now. I want to get face to face with as many people as humanly possible. And in the same breath, the people that we've met with that didn't buy, we've gotten referrals from. So meet everybody and anyone and everyone you possibly can.
That's true.
And talk about real estate.
Yep. I don't even have to add anything.
That's great
I
advice.
completely agree.
I think mentally speaking thing though, we've got to look at this as it's not a seller's market, it's a skill set market, right? Yes. Is it a strong market? Sure it is. The buyers don't have to hear all the time that it's a seller's market. It is a strong set market, and those agents that will be successful have a higher skill set than those agents that aren't. That's the script practicing, it's lead generation, it's spending time on additional sources of inventory. It's, you know, Saria was saying she's a very scripted person and you can't tell it. It's because she hones her craft. Those are the people that are successful right now.
This has been so good and so many takeaways. We could keep talking about this forever. Unfortunately, we have to go. I know it's I'm very upset too, because it's so much good, so many good nuggets. Daniel, I love what you just said about just meet them now, because once they see you, you're basically their agent at that point, right? Especially, and once they see you and you give them good information, you know, you're basically their agent at that point. And you never know what could come from that relationship that you're forming. You know, maybe mom or dad needs to sell, you know, maybe their brother needs to buy. So those are all really good points. Meet with everybody. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, all three of you, for being here. I learned even more than I learned from you, so I appreciate it. And everyone watching, I'm sure, got tons of value. And how can they reach out to you guys if they want to ask some questions? What's your direct cell? Just kidding. What's the email? Like, if someone wants to reach out with a question, do you want to email address?
Yeah, for me, it would be email. I'm terrible with Facebook Messenger. I'm sure there's people on here who have sent me messages on Facebook. There's like thousands of messages in my other inbox. So I'm sorry if you're one of those people. So you can email me. It's Saria, Saria, @LoriReader.com. I'll just go ahead and type it in the chat as well.
Yeah. And I was kidding about the cell phone numbers. Don't worry, Jen.
Oh, I'm totally getting Saria's out. I've got hers. If you guys need it, just let me know. I'm going to trade it for her to come.
But we're real estate agents. We're real estate agents. We should be able to find your cell phone everywhere. So,
yeah.
All right. Cool. Well, thanks, everyone.